The stars had always been silent, and humanity had always wondered why. For centuries, Earth scientists pointed their telescopes at the cosmos, searching for signs of life beyond their violent little world. They sent radio signals into the void, mathematical proofs of their existence, hopeful messages, and bottles cast into an infinite ocean. The silence that answered back became a source of both disappointment and relief. Then, on a Tuesday morning in March 2187, the silence ended. The Galactic Assembly survey ship materialized at the edge of Earth's solar system, its arrival marked by a flash of exotic particles that lit up every sensor on Lunabase. Within minutes, every military installation on Earth went to high alert. Within hours, the Assembly's translators had decoded human languages, and the first message arrived. Greetings, children of Terra. We come in peace. As representatives of the Galactic Assembly, we welcome you to the community of civilized species. Captain Elena Vasquez stood in the command center of Orbital Station 7, staring at the alien vessel on her screen. It was beautiful in a way that human ships were not, where humanity built their spacecraft like weapons wrapped in armor. This alien ship looked like a piece of art, all flowing lines and crystalline structures that caught the light of the sun. They've been watching us, Admiral Chen said beside her, his weathered face tight with concern. The message says they've observed Earth for 50 years. They were waiting to see if we'd destroy ourselves before making contact. Elena nodded slowly. She had read the first contact protocols 100 times during her training, but none of them had prepared her for this moment. The aliens claimed they represented 47 different species, all living in harmony across thousands of worlds. They spoke of trade, cultural exchange, and membership in something called the Galactic Assembly. But there was something in their message that bothered her. A single line that her superiors were already arguing about in emergency sessions across every capital on Earth. We are pleased to see that even a Class 12 Deathworld can produce sapient life. Class 12 Deathworld. The aliens had used those words like they were a simple classification. But the more humanity learned about galactic standards, the more disturbing that designation became. Earth, it turned out, was one of the most dangerous planets in known space. Its gravity was crushing by galactic standards. Its atmosphere was corrosive, rich with oxygen that would be considered a toxic gas on most civilized worlds. Its weather patterns were violent and unpredictable. Its oceans were acidic soup, filled with creatures that could kill in thousands of different ways. Its land masses hosted everything from microscopic killers to apex predators that could tear through steel. And humanity had evolved right in the middle of all that death. The Assembly's xenobiologists were fascinated. They studied human physiology with the enthusiasm of scientists who had discovered something that shouldn't exist. Humans could survive injuries that would kill most galactic species outright. They could adapt to almost any environment. They could eat food that would poison other species. Their bodies were walking chemical factories, producing everything from natural painkillers to compounds that helped them heal at remarkable speeds. But most impressive was human endurance. Where other species needed rest after short bursts of activity, humans could simply keep going. They could run for hours, work for days, fight for weeks. Their bodies weren't built for explosive power like the predator species, or lightning-fast reflexes like the prey species. They were built to outlast everything else. The Assembly was impressed. They were also completely unprepared for what that meant. First contact proceeded smoothly for 6 months. Cultural exchanges happened. Trade negotiations began. Earth's nations, for once in their bloody history, worked together to present a unified front. Humanity was on its best behavior, eager to prove they belonged among the stars. Then the Zarion Confederacy attacked New Hope Colony. New Hope was humanity's first extrasolar colony, a modest settlement of 15,000 people on a planet they had named Providence. It was a farming world, peaceful and productive, home to families who had left Earth seeking a fresh start among the stars. The colony had 3 small defense satellites and a handful of security personnel armed with basic weapons. The Zetharians saw easy prey. They were a proud species, mid-ranking in the Assembly's complex hierarchy. They had recently lost a trade dispute with the Vixari and were looking to restore their prestige. The human colony was perfect. It was isolated, poorly defended, and attacking it would send a message that the Zetharians were still a power to be respected. According to galactic law, they issued a formal challenge. According to galactic custom, they gave the colony 72 hours to surrender. According to galactic tradition, they expected immediate compliance. They had no idea what they had just started. Commander Marcus Webb was a retired Marine who had taken a security job on New Hope to be close to his daughter and grandchildren. He was 58 years old, with bad knees and a collection of scars from 3 different wars on Earth. When the Zetharian ultimatum arrived, he read it twice, then started laughing. "They want us to surrender," he told his security team. "They're giving us 3 days to pack our bags and leave." "What do we do?" asked Sarah Chen, one of his young officers. Marcus looked at her and smiled. It was not a kind smile. "We show them what happens when you threaten human families." The Zaltharian force that arrived at New Hope consisted of 300 warriors supported by orbital artillery and air superiority. They were equipped with energy weapons, powered armor, and centuries of military tradition. They landed at dawn on the 3rd day, expecting to find colonists already assembled for evacuation. Instead, they found an empty settlement. The first Zeron patrol disappeared in the agricultural field south of the main colony. No weapons fire, no distress calls. They simply stopped responding. The second patrol sent to investigate found their comrades' bodies arranged in a clearing, their weapons missing. That was when the Zetharians realized they had made a terrible mistake. The humans didn't fight like any species the Zetharians had ever encountered. There were no mass formations, no honorable challenges, no scheduled battles. The colonists had scattered into the wilderness, taking everything useful with them, and now they were hunting their would-be conquerors. Marcus Webb had spent 30 years learning how to fight enemies with better weapons and more resources. He had studied guerrilla warfare, asymmetric tactics, and the art of making an enemy wish they had never started a fight. Now he taught those lessons to farmers and teachers, to miners and engineers, to every colonist who could hold a weapon. They struck at night when the Zetharians' technology-dependent vision struggled in the dark. Human eyes evolved to track prey across ancient savas saw well enough. They set traps using mining equipment and agricultural tools. They ambushed supply convoys. They destroyed communication relays. They made every meter of ground cost blood. The Zathians called for reinforcements. The humans adapted. They learned the aliens' tactics, memorized their patrol patterns, exploited their weaknesses. Where the Zetharians expected surrender after the first casualties, the humans simply became more determined. "Why won't they stop?" the Zetharian commander demanded after losing his 4th patrol. "We've killed 30 of them. They should surrender." His tactical officer looked at the reports coming in from the field. "Sir, I don't think they understand the concept of acceptable losses. They're not stopping. They're getting better at killing us." The siege of New Hope lasted 3 weeks. The Zarians, with their superior numbers and technology, should have won in 3 days. But every day more of their warriors disappeared. Every night their camps came under attack. The colonists poisoned their water supplies using industrial chemicals. They rigged buildings to explode. They used homemade rockets built from farming equipment. And they never, ever stopped fighting. By the end of the first week, Zarian warriors were refusing to go on patrol. By the end of the second week, they were seeing human shadows everywhere, jumping at sounds in the dark. By the end of the 3rd week, they were begging to be evacuated. Marcus Webb died on day 19, taking down a Zaran assault team that had gotten too close to where the civilian families were hiding. He used a homemade bomb in his own body as the trigger. His last words, transmitted to every human on the planet, were simple: "Make them pay for every inch." The colonists did. When Earth's response fleet finally arrived, they found the Zalarians in full retreat. 300 warriors had become barely 100 survivors, traumatized and broken. The humans had lost 87 people, and they had been winning. The news spread across the Galactic Assembly like wildfire. The recordings of the battle, captured by Zarian suit cameras, were studied in military me's across 1,000 worlds. The footage showed humans doing impossible things, fighting while injured, setting ambushes that required waiting motionless for hours, coordinating attacks without modern communication equipment, refusing to surrender even when tactically defeated. The Assembly's military analysts tried to understand what they had witnessed. They had classified humanity as a sapient species from a dangerous world, but they had assumed that civilization would have softened the death world instincts. They were wrong. Humans hadn't been civilized. They had simply been organized, underneath the art and music and literature, underneath the laws and customs and social contracts. There was still the species that had climbed to the top of Earth's food chain by being tougher, meaner, and more persistent than anything else that walked, swam, or flew. In the Assembly's Grand Council chamber, representatives from 47 species gathered for an emergency session. The Zetherians had been censured for attacking, without Assembly approval, but that wasn't the real issue on everyone's mind. The real question was simple and terrifying. What do we do about the humans? The Vexari delegation, elegant beings of crystalline thought and peaceful philosophy, argued for caution. They are young. The Vexanari speaker said, they can be guided toward civilization. We must be patient. The Corax Dominion, a species of armored warriors who prided themselves on military prowess, had a different view. They are dangerous, the Corax ambassador growled. We saw what a handful of their civilians did to trained warriors. Imagine what their actual soldiers could do. We must act now before they spread further. The debate raged for hours. Some species wanted to isolate humanity, to quarantine Earth and let them develop alone. Others wanted to integrate them quickly, hoping that exposure to galactic civilization would gentle their violent nature. And a growing faction led by the Corax wanted something more permanent. They wanted humanity eliminated while it was still possible. In the end, 12 species voted to support a military solution. It wasn't enough to make it an official assembly action, but it was enough to form a coalition. They would call it a peacekeeping mission, a necessary action to protect galactic stability. They would present it to humanity as a choice: submit to assembly oversight and restrictions, or face the consequences. They were sure the humans would see reason. After all, they were facing the combined might of 12 advanced civilizations. What choice did they have but to surrender? On Earth, in the deep bunkers that had been built during humanity's various Cold Wars, military planners received the intelligence and started working. They pulled out old files, doctrines from wars that most civilized species would consider barbaric. They looked at the numbers and the odds, and they didn't flinch. Humanity had faced extinction before, from ice ages to plagues, from nuclear standoffs to environmental collapse. They had always been one bad day away from annihilation, and they had always survived. This would just be another Tuesday. Admiral Chen addressed the United Earth Defense Council with steady calm. They're coming, he said simply. 12 species, approximately 400 warships, and enough ground forces to occupy every human world. They expect us to surrender. What are our chances? Someone asked. Shen smiled, and it was the same smile Marcus Webb had worn 3 weeks ago. They have better technology, more ships, more soldiers. They have every advantage except one. What's that? They don't know how to fight a Deathworlder. They're about to learn. The message went out to every human world, every station, every ship. It was time to show the galaxy what humanity had learned during thousands of years of warfare. It was time to prove that evolution on a Class 12 Death World meant something. The Assembly's fleet began assembling at their staging point, and humanity prepared to teach the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. The hunt was on, and for the first time in galactic history, the prey was ready to bite back. The Galactic Assembly Central Intelligence Archive was located on Vexnar Prime, a world of crystalline towers and peaceful meditation gardens. For 3,000 years, it had served as the repository of knowledge for 47 civilizations. Its databases contained everything from poetry to physics, from art to anthropology. The beings who maintained it were scholars, not soldiers, dedicated to understanding the infinite diversity of intelligent life. They had never encountered anything like humanity's military history scholar, Teshva, of the Vexari, had volunteered to compile the report on human warfare. She thought it would be a simple task. Every species had conflicts in their past, usually brief territorial disputes or resource competition, that ended when one side accepted defeat. She expected to find similar patterns in human history. What she found instead gave her nightmares. The first shock came when she realized how recent human conflicts were. Most civilized species had their last war thousands of years ago before they reached the stars. Humanity had been fighting industrial scale wars within the last century. They had stopped shooting at each other only long enough to reach space, and even then they had brought their weapons with them. The second shock was the scale. The Vexenari's last war had involved 2 city-states fighting over a water source. 300 casualties over 2 years, and both sides still spoke of it as a terrible tragedy. Human wars regularly killed millions, sometimes tens of millions. Their Second World War had killed more people than currently lived on some assembly worlds. But the third shock, the one that made Tesha stop reading for a full day, was the nature of human warfare itself. She pulled up a file labeled Total War and began to read. The concept was simple and horrifying. When humans decided to fight, they didn't just commit their militaries, they committed everything. Entire economies shifted to war production. Civilians became combatants. Cities became fortresses. Victory wasn't achieved by winning battles, but by destroying the enemy's ability to resist. There were subcategories. Scorched earth meant destroying everything useful as you retreated, leaving the enemy nothing but ash and ruin. Strategic bombing meant attacking civilian population centers to break enemy morale. Unrestricted submarine warfare meant sinking any ship that might help the enemy, civilian or not. And then there were the weapons. Tesha read about poison gas that dissolved lungs, about biological weapons that spread plague, about incendiary bombs that created firestorms hot enough to melt stone, about nuclear weapons that could erase entire cities in seconds and leave the ground poisonous for generations. The most disturbing part was that humans had used all of these things. They hadn't just theorized about them or kept them as deterrents. They had actually deployed them against each other. She found a document called the Geneva Conventions and felt a moment of hope. Perhaps these were peace treaties, evidence that humanity had learned better. She started reading, and the hope died. The Geneva Conventions weren't peace treaties. They were rules for making war less horrible. They were created because human warfare had become so terrible that even humans thought there should be limits. The fact that they needed such rules, that they had to formally agree not to torture prisoners or use certain weapons, told Tesha everything she needed to know. Humans had looked at war and thought, this is too cruel, even for us. She compiled her report and sent it to the Assembly's Military Council. Then she went to her meditation garden and tried very hard not to think about what she had learned. The report reached the Council at the same time as intelligence from Earth itself. The humans knew about the coalition fleet. They knew they were facing overwhelming force. And instead of panicking or seeking diplomatic solutions, they had done something that no species in the Assembly had seen before. They had mobilized for total war. Every shipyard in human space was working at full capacity. Civilian vessels were being retrofitted with weapons. Factories that made ground cars were now making tanks. Pharmaceutical companies were producing combat stimulants. Entertainment companies were creating propaganda. Every human world had instituted mandatory military training for all adults, and they were doing it all in complete unity. Earth's nations, which had spent the last century in various states of conflict and competition, had unified overnight. There were no holdouts, no peace movements, no dissent. When faced with an external threat, humanity had become one thing, a weapon aimed at the stars. Ambassador Krelnoth of the Corfax Dominion studied the reports with growing satisfaction. You see, he told the Coalition Council, this proves they are dangerous. They are preparing for war before we have even made our demands. We must strike now. They are preparing because they know we are coming. The Vexari representative countered, perhaps if we approached with diplomacy instead of threats. Diplomacy? Krelnoth's translator couldn't quite capture his contempt. We have tried diplomacy. They smile and nod and agree to treaties while building weapons in secret. We have the intelligence. Do you know what their term for this is? Speak softly and carry a big stick. They even have sayings about how to lie during peace negotiations. He pulled up a hologram showing Earth's military deployments. Look at this. They have placed weapons platforms around every inhabited world. They have mined the approaches to their colonies. They have armed civilian vessels. They are not a peaceful species playing at war. They are a warrior species. pretending to be civilized. The evidence was hard to argue with. Human military doctrine was unlike anything in the Assembly's experience, where galactic warfare focused on decisive fleet engagements between professional soldiers. Human doctrine assumed every person was a potential combatant, and every object was a potential weapon. The Coalition's military planners tried to develop strategies for fighting humans, and kept running into the same problems. Humans didn't follow the normal rules of engagement. They didn't surrender when casualties reached acceptable levels. They didn't distinguish clearly between military and civilian targets. They used tactics that were considered dishonorable or excessive by galactic standards. General Theexkar of the Omaronian Empire studied human military history with the focus of a professional trying to understand a puzzle. He had fought in 3 wars and commanded fleets for 20 years. He was considered one of the finest military minds in the Assembly. Humanity's warfare baffled him. They used deception constantly, he told his staff. False retreats, fake radio traffic, camouflage, decoys, misinformation. They have entire military units dedicated to lying to the enemy. They consider it a legitimate tactic. Surely that violates some code of honor, one of his officers asked. They don't have one. Not the way we understand it. They have rules, yes, but those rules are practical, not honorable. They won't use poison gas because it's too unpredictable, not because it's dishonorable. They'll do anything that works. He pulled up a tactical recording from the New Hope colony battle. Watch this. This is a human civilian, a farmer, pretending to surrender. The Zoltarian warriors lower their weapons to accept the surrender. The human detonates an explosive hidden in his clothing, killing himself and 4 warriors. The room went silent. That's impossible, someone whispered. No one would sacrifice themselves like that. Not for a battle that's already lost. Humans do it regularly. They call them suicide attacks. They have used them throughout their history. The warrior who does it is considered a hero, not a failure. Dexar closed the recording. We are not fighting a civilized species that happens to be good at war. We are fighting a species that was forged by war, that evolved to wage war, that thinks about war in ways we cannot comprehend. Then how do we defeat them? Theexar was quiet for a long moment. Overwhelming force. Hit them so hard and so fast that they cannot adapt. Use our technological advantage before they can close the gap and hope that they follow galactic conventions when they surrender. He didn't sound confident. Back on Earth in a bunker beneath the Appalachian Mountains, General Sarah Martinez was having a very different conversation with her staff. She was the commanding officer of Earth's Strategic Defense Forces, a position that had been largely ceremonial until 6 months ago. Now she was planning how to fight a war against enemies with better technology, more ships, and a 1,000-year head start. She was also, in her own way, excited. Let's review what we know, she said, pulling up star charts and intelligence reports. The Coalition has 400 warships. We have 97. They have energy shields that can shrug off our missiles. They have weapons that can hit us from ranges we can't match. They have faster-than-light travel that's better than ours. In a straight fight, they crush us. So, we don't fight straight, her tactical officer said. Exactly. We fight like humans. Martinez smiled. They're used to formal warfare, scheduled engagements, clear objectives, honor codes. We throw all of that out and do what we do best. We make them miserable. She pulled up a document that was over 200 years old. This is the Viet Cong Tactical Manual. Small unit tactics, asymmetric warfare, how to fight an enemy with complete air superiority and better weapons. We used it in our own wars. Now we adapted for space. Her staff leaned in, taking notes. Hit-and-run attacks. Never give them a stand-up fight. Always be moving. Always be adapting. Use their rules against them. They announce their attacks in advance. We evacuate and booby-trap the targets. They try to occupy our colonies. We turn every colonist into a resistance fighter. They send supply convoys. We hit them with everything from missiles to asteroids with rockets strapped to them. They'll call us dishonorable, someone pointed out. Let them. We're not trying to win their respect. We're trying to survive. And if that means fighting dirty, then we fight dirty. It's what we're good at. She pulled up another file. This one more recent. This is from the Rand Corporation study on deterrence theory. The key insight is that you don't have to win every battle. You just have to make winning cost more than the enemy is willing to pay. We can't beat them in a war of annihilation, but we can make occupying human space so painful, so costly, so psychologically devastating, that they give up and go home. That's not a battle plan. One of the more traditional officers objected. That's terrorism. No, Martinez corrected. Terrorism is violence against civilians to create fear for political purposes. What we're planning is guerrilla warfare against a military occupation force. There's a difference, and we need to maintain it. We follow our own rules of engagement. We protect civilians, even enemy civilians. We take prisoners when possible. We maintain the moral high ground. She looked around the room. Because at the end of this, we need to be able to live with ourselves. And more importantly, we need the rest of the galaxy to see us as the good guys. The assembly is bigger than just this coalition. There are species watching who haven't taken sides yet. We need them to see us defending ourselves, not committing atrocities. Walk the line between effectiveness and ethics, someone summarized. Exactly. We're going to use every dirty trick we know, but we're going to do it by the book. Our book, not theirs. The planning continued through the night. They reviewed tactics from every human conflict, from ancient warfare to modern counterinsurgency, from naval battles to space operations. They borrowed ideas from Sun Tzu and Clausewitz, from Rommel and Gap, from every general and strategist who had ever thought about how to win against superior forces. And slowly, a plan came together. They would defend their worlds not with massive fleets, but with hidden bases and mobile strike forces. They would turn asteroid fields into fortresses and empty space into minefields. They would make the coalition pay for every system, every planet, every meter of space. They would use their one advantage, the thing that Deathworld evolution had given them, the ability to endure. They would bleed the coalition until it gave up. In the Galactic Assembly's chambers, the final vote was taken. The coalition would issue one final ultimatum to humanity: submit to assembly oversight, accept limits on military development, and allow peacekeeping forces on human worlds, refuse, and face the consequences. The Vexari delegation voted against the motion, but they were in the minority. The resolution passed. The message was sent to Earth formal and clear. Humanity had 1 week to respond. The response came back in 6 hours. It was not a message. It was a broadcast sent on every frequency and every language the Assembly used. It came from the Secretary General of the United Earth Government, a woman named Chen Wei, who had spent her career as a diplomat working for peace. She looked directly at the camera, her face calm, but her eyes hard. To the Galactic Assembly and the coalition of species threatening humanity, we have received your ultimatum. We have considered it carefully. Our answer is no. She paused, letting that sink in. You call us violent. You call us dangerous. You say we must be controlled for the good of the galaxy. Perhaps you are right. Perhaps we are everything you fear. But we are also free, and we will not surrender that freedom, because you are afraid of what we might become. You have given us a week to comply. We give you the same. Leave human space. Return to your worlds. Do not threaten us again. If you choose to attack, know that you are starting a war that will not end when you tire of it. It will end when we are victorious, or when we are extinct. Those are the only two outcomes we recognize. We are the children of Earth, a world that tried to kill us every day for millions of years. We survived ice ages and plagues, predators and disasters. We crawled up from the mud and reached for the stars. We did not do all of that just to bow to bullies. Now come if you must, but know what you are starting. You are not fighting a war. You are fighting a species that does not know how to quit. The broadcast ended in the assembly chambers. There was stunned silence, then angry shouting. The Corfax delegation demanded immediate military action. The Vexari called for more diplomacy. Other species argued both sides, but the coalition's course was set. They had made their threat, and now they had to follow through. To back down would be to lose face in front of the entire galaxy. The fleet began to move. 400 warships, the largest military force assembled in 300 years, began the journey toward human space. On Earth, the air raid sirens began to sound, not in warning of an immediate attack, but in preparation. People stopped in the streets and looked up at the sky, knowing that somewhere out there an enemy was coming. And then they went back to work, building, training, preparing. The galaxy was about to learn what it meant to fight a Deathworlder, and humanity was about to teach them a lesson they would never forget. Admiral Krenthor of the Korvac Dominion stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Glory, and watched the planet New Avalon grow larger on the view screen. Behind him, spread across 3 parsecs of space, was the largest battle fleet he had ever commanded. 400 warships from 12 species, carrying enough firepower to glass a planet's surface 3 times over. He felt confident the humans would see this fleet and understand that resistance was futile. They would surrender, and this unfortunate incident would be over. The Dominion would gain prestige, the assembly would be secured, and the dangerous humans would be properly controlled. It was going to be a good day. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "we are receiving a transmission from the planet's surface." "Put it through." The face that appeared on screen was human, male, probably in his 40s. He wore the uniform of Earth's Defense Forces, with the rank insignia of a colonel. His expression was calm, almost bored. "This is Colonel James Hartley, commanding officer of New Avalon Defense Force. I'm legally obligated to inform you that you are entering a restricted military zone. Turn back now, or face defensive action." Krenthor couldn't help but laugh. "You have a few dozen ships and some orbital platforms. We have 400 warships. I am giving you one opportunity to surrender peacefully. Evacuate your military forces to designated landing zones, and no harm will come to your civilians." The human's expression didn't change. "That's not going to happen. You have 5 minutes to leave the system. After that, we will consider you hostile and act accordingly. You cannot be serious. You must see that resistance is impossible. Now." The human smiled, and Krenthor felt a chill run down his spine. It was not a friendly smile. "5 minutes, Admiral. I suggest you use them wisely." The transmission cut out. Krenthor stared at the blank screen for a moment, then shook himself. Human bravado. They would learn. "All ships combat formation. Prepare to disable the defense platforms. Minimal force. We want prisoners for questioning." The fleet moved forward, weapons charging. The defense platforms around New Avalon were small, hastily constructed things that shouldn't pose any threat to proper warships. The Coalition's first wave would sweep them aside, establishing orbital superiority. Then the ground forces would land and secure the planet. It should have been simple. The first platform exploded before they could fire a shot at it. Then the second. Then the third. All 6 orbital defense platforms detonated simultaneously. And suddenly the space around New Avalon was filled with debris. Not just fragments, but pieces deliberately sized in shape to cause maximum damage. Metal shards traveling at orbital velocities, spreading in an expanding cloud. "Evasive action," Krenthor ordered. But it was too late for the forward ships. 3 destroyers flew directly into the debris field. Their shields held for a moment, then overloaded. The debris tore through hulls like paper. 2 ships were disabled. The third lost containment on its reactor and exploded. They destroyed their own defenses to weaponize the debris, the tactical officer said in shock. "That's insane." "It's effective," Krenthor corrected grimly. "Reform the fleet. Deploy drones to clear the debris field." While they were dealing with the debris the human ship struck, there weren't many of them. Maybe 40 vessels, mostly converted civilian craft. They shouldn't have been a threat. But they weren't fighting like proper warships. They came in fast and close, too close for the larger coalition vessels to effectively target them, and launched missiles at point-blank range, before burning away at maximum acceleration. The missiles weren't standard either. Some were conventional explosives. Others were filled with metallic chaff that disrupted sensors. A few were just empty shells designed to waste point defense ammunition. And one, just one, was a nuclear weapon that detonated close enough to a Maronian cruiser to scramble its electronic systems for 3 hours. "They're using atomics," someone gasped. "Barely," the tactical officer reported. "That was a small yield, maybe 20 kilotons. It was meant to disable, not destroy. But still, they're using nuclear weapons in their own orbit." Krenthor was beginning to understand that the humans didn't fight the way civilized species did. They fought to win whatever it took. Press forward, land the ground forces. Once we control the planet, their ships become irrelevant. But landing the ground forces proved difficult. The humans had filled their own atmosphere with chaff and jamming signals. Half the landing craft missed their designated zones. Two collided with each other in the confusion. One landed in what appeared to be an empty field and promptly sank into a bog that shouldn't have been there, according to the maps. The landing craft that did reach their targets found prepared defenses, trenches, bunkers, minefields, and thousands of humans who had apparently spent the last month doing nothing but preparing to make life difficult for invaders. General Vexthal led the ground assault. He was a veteran of 4 campaigns and had never tasted defeat. He expected to take the main human settlement within hours. It should have been simple. His forces outnumbered the human defenders 3-1. They had better armor, better weapons, better everything. But the humans didn't stand and fight. They hit and ran. They set ambushes. They lured coalition forces into kill zones, then melted away before reinforcements could arrive. They fought in the ruins of buildings they had demolished themselves. They turned streets into death traps, and sewers into infiltration routes. And they fought at night. Most coalition species had evolved on planets with longer days than Earth. Their circadian rhythms assumed they would have time to rest during dark periods. They relied on technology for night vision, and that technology could be jammed or destroyed. The humans, it turned out, could see reasonably well in the dark. Better than that, they were comfortable in it. They moved through shadows like ghosts and struck without warning. The first night on New Avalon, Vexthal's forces lost 40 soldiers to attacks they never saw coming. The second night, they lost 60. By the third night, his soldiers were refusing to leave their fortified positions after dark. "They're terrorizing us," one of his officers said. "This isn't warfare. This is psychological torture." "It's effective," Vexthal said grimly. He had started to understand what Scholar Teshiva had tried to warn them about. The humans weren't just defending their planet. They were actively trying to break the Coalition's will to fight. He sent a report to Admiral Krenthor. "The ground campaign is not proceeding as planned. We control approximately 30% of the main settlement and none of the surrounding territory. Human forces are highly mobile and refuse decisive engagement. Request orbital bombardment of suspected enemy positions." The response came back quickly. "Negative. Assembly rules prohibit bombardment of civilian areas. Continue ground operations." Vexthal wanted to throw his communicator across the room. The humans didn't seem to care about assembly rules. They were using civilian buildings as firing positions. They were distributing weapons to civilians. They had booby-trapped schools and hospitals. But the Coalition had to follow the rules. It gave the humans an enormous advantage. The siege dragged on. Days became weeks. The Coalition controlled a few key locations, but couldn't pacify the planet. Every time they secured an area, the humans would infiltrate back in through tunnels or sewers, or maintenance shafts. Supply convoys needed heavy escorts. Patrols disappeared. Equipment malfunctioned under mysterious circumstances, and the casualties mounted. Not massive casualties, not the kind that happened in decisive battles, just a steady drip of losses. A patrol ambushed here, a supply depot sabotaged there, a soldier shot by a sniper they never spotted. Death by 1,000 cuts. Admiral Krenthor watched the casualty reports with growing concern. They had lost almost 300 soldiers in 6 weeks. Not a huge number by the standards of their fleet, but more than they had lost in the last 3 wars combined. And more importantly, they were making no progress. "We should pull back," his second-in-command suggested. "Blockade the planet, cut off their supplies, starve them out." "The humans have underground farms and water recycling," Krenthor replied. "They could last for years, and the assembly will not support a years-long siege. Then what do we do?" That was the question. The Coalition had overwhelming force, but force wasn't solving the problem. The humans were fighting asymmetrically, exploiting every weakness, following none of the normal rules of engagement. In orbit, the human ships continued their hit-and-run attacks. They never engaged directly, never gave the Coalition fleet a chance to bring its superior firepower to bear. They would pop up from behind a moon, launch missiles, and disappear before the response could arrive. They mined approach vectors. They scattered sensor decoys. They made the space around New Avalon a nightmare to navigate. Krenthor tried a different approach, broadcast to the planet's surface, offered generous surrender terms. Any civilian who cooperates will be relocated safely. Any soldier who surrenders will be treated well. The broadcast played for 3 days. The response came in the form of increased attacks and a video message from Colonel Hartley to the coalition forces currently occupying our planet. You control some buildings and a few streets. You do not control New Avalon. You never will. Every day you stay, we will make you pay. Every supply convoy, every patrol, every time you close your eyes to sleep, we will be there. This is our home, and we will fight for it until you leave, or until we're all dead. Those are your only 2 options. Choose wisely. The broadcast became popular among coalition troops for all the wrong reasons. It confirmed what they were all starting to feel. This wasn't a war they could win. The humans weren't going to surrender. They weren't going to negotiate. They were going to keep fighting, keep bleeding the coalition, keep making life miserable, until everyone gave up and went home. Morale began to collapse. The Moronian contingent requested rotation off the line. After 8 weeks, the Zabathan forces reported a third of their troops showing signs of combat stress. Even Krenthor's own Corfax warriors, bred for battle, were exhausted. The problem was that humans had evolved for persistence hunting. They were built to keep going long after other species would have collapsed. They could fight on less sleep, sustain themselves on basic rations, and maintain operational tempo for weeks at a time. The coalition forces needed rest cycles, proper facilities, regular resupply. The humans just needed a hole to hide in and ammunition for their weapons. Then the coalition made a mistake. A frustrated patrol commander, tired of being sniped at from civilian buildings, ordered his forces to fire on a structure without confirming it was clear of non-combatants. 12 civilians died, including children. The human response was immediate and brutal. That patrol was hunted down and eliminated to the last soldier. Every coalition outpost came under simultaneous attack. Casualties in a single night exceeded everything from the previous week. And then came the broadcasts. The humans took footage of the dead civilians and sent it everywhere to the coalition forces, to the assembly, to every species watching the conflict. They didn't editorialize or embellish. They just showed what had happened and let others draw conclusions. The political fallout was immediate. The Zavathan government, facing public outcry, withdrew their forces from the coalition. The Vexari ambassador proposed an emergency assembly session to discuss war crimes. Public opinion across the galaxy began to shift. The coalition had come to New Avalon to demonstrate that humans could be defeated, that they could be controlled. Instead, they had shown the galaxy exactly what humanity had tried to explain. Humans didn't fight wars the way civilized species did. They fought total war. They fought forever. And they made you regret ever starting the fight. Admiral Krenthor sat in his quarters and read the latest casualty reports. 600 dead now. Thousands more exhausted, traumatized, or requesting transfer. And they still didn't control the planet. He thought about the war from the Galactic Assembly's perspective. They had wanted to solve the human problem quickly, decisively, overwhelmingly. Instead, they had created the worst possible outcome. They had united humanity against a common enemy. They had shown the galaxy that humans could stand against superior force and win. And they had demonstrated that occupying a human world was impossible. His communicator chimed. A message from Assembly Command. He opened it, read it twice, then closed his eyes. 3 more species had withdrawn from the coalition. 5 others were threatening to leave. The Vexari had pushed through a resolution calling for immediate ceasefire. The assembly was fracturing. The coalition had lost the political war while still fighting the military one. Krenthor made the hardest decision of his career. He contacted his government, explained the situation, and recommended withdrawal. Then he sent a message to Colonel Hartley. The coalition is prepared to discuss terms for a withdrawal from New Avalon. We require guarantees for the safety of our forces during evacuation. The response came back in minutes. Leave your weapons and equipment, take your wounded. You have 72 hours to evacuate. After that, anyone remaining is considered hostile. That is unacceptable. We will not abandon our equipment. Then you can stay, and we'll keep killing you. Your choice. In the end, they agreed to a compromise. The coalition forces could take personal weapons and vehicles, but would leave heavy equipment behind. It was humiliating, but it was better than continuing a war they couldn't win. The evacuation took 2 days. Coalition forces pulled back to their landing zones, formed defensive perimeters, and waited for transport. Human forces watched but didn't attack. They honored the ceasefire, though coalition soldiers reported seeing humans everywhere armed and ready, making it clear that this was mercy, not weakness. When the last coalition ship left orbit, Colonel Hartley stood on the roof of New Avalon's command center and watched them go. His staff gathered around him, exhausted but victorious. "We did it," someone said quietly. "We won. We survived." Hartley corrected. "That's not the same thing. New Avalon is devastated, thousands dead, years of rebuilding ahead. But yes, we survived. And we taught them something important." "What's that?" "That Deathworlders don't quit ever. And that if you come for us, you better be prepared to pay a price you can't afford." The news spread across human space and beyond. New Avalon, a single planet with 40,000 colonists, had stood off the largest military force in assembly history. The siege had lasted 3 months. The coalition had taken over 2,000 casualties and achieved nothing. The message was clear. Humans could be killed, but they couldn't be conquered. You could win battles against them, but you couldn't win wars. They would keep fighting, keep adapting, keep making you pay until you gave up. The rest of the coalition looked at New Avalon's example and came to a simple conclusion. This war was a mistake, and it needed to end before it got worse. But that decision came too late, because while the coalition was learning its lesson at New Avalon, humanity's special forces were teaching that same lesson across dozens of other systems, and those lessons were written in fire and blood. The supply depot on Kahio 7 was considered one of the most secure installations in coalition space. It sat in a heavily defended system, protected by patrol routes, sensor nets, and automated defense platforms. The depot itself supplied 30 systems with fuel, ammunition, and equipment. Without it, the coalition's war effort would slow to a crawl. The facility's commander, Overseer Drenth, was a cautious being. He ran daily security checks, maintained strict access protocols, and kept his staff alert for any signs of infiltration. When the war with humanity began, he doubled his security measures. It wasn't enough. The attack came 3 months into the siege of New Avalon. No ships appeared on sensors. No assault forces landed. There was simply an explosion in the main fuel storage facility, followed by secondary explosions as fire spread through the connected storage tanks. Within an hour, 70% of the depot's fuel reserves were burning. The investigation found evidence of sabotage. Someone had placed charges precisely where they would cause maximum cascading damage. The security footage showed nothing. The access log showed no unauthorized entry. Whoever had done it had been invisible to every system Drenth had in place. It was the first of many such attacks. Across coalition space, supply lines began to fail. Fuel depots exploded. Ammunition shipments disappeared. Transport ships suffered mysterious malfunctions. Command centers lost communications. Nothing catastrophic, nothing that would the war effort immediately, but a steady degradation of the coalition's ability to sustain operations. Admiral Krenthor received the reports with growing dread. "How many incidents now?" 47 confirmed attacks in the last month, his intelligence officer replied. "Probably more that haven't been reported or recognized as sabotage. The pattern is clear. Someone is systematically targeting our logistics network." "Someone," Krenthor said quietly. "You mean humans? We have no proof. No survivors from most sites. No footage. But who else would it be? How are they doing it? We're talking about installations hundreds of light years apart. How are they infiltrating secure facilities without being detected?" The intelligence officer pulled up a file marked with the highest security classification. "We captured one admiral 3 days ago. A human infiltrator was caught on a supply station in the Threxus system. He survived his capture barely. We've been interrogating him, and he's not talking, but we did identify him. Captain David Chen, formerly of Earth's Marine Force Reconnaissance, specialist in deep penetration operations. According to his file, he's trained in covert infiltration, sabotage, and long-term survival behind enemy lines." "A spy?" More than that, he's part of something called Special Forces. Earth has several organizations like this: Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, British SS, Russian Spetsnaz. Elite soldiers trained for unconventional warfare. Small unit operations, sabotage, assassination, reconnaissance. They work in teams of 4 to 12 individuals and operate independently for months at a time. Krenthor felt cold. How many of these Special Forces soldiers do the humans have? We don't know. Estimates range from 20 to 50,000 across all their branches. Probably hundreds of them were deployed before the war started, positioned throughout coalition space, waiting for orders. Waiting for orders, Krenthor repeated. So they were here before we even made our ultimatum. They knew we were coming. Human intelligence is very good, Admiral. They've been preparing for this war since first contact. The realization settled over Krenthor like a shroud. The humans hadn't just defended against the coalition's attack. They had planned for it, prepared for it, and positioned assets to strike back before the first shot was fired. This wasn't desperate defense. This was strategy. The Special Forces operations continued to escalate. A coalition general was assassinated in his headquarters by a sniper no one saw. A Quark's battle fleet found its navigation computers infected with malware that sent them days off course. A communications relay was destroyed, cutting off 6 systems from Fleet Command for a week. And then came the kidnapping. High Commander Veloth of the Korax Dominion was the 3rd highest-ranking military leader in the coalition. He was traveling on a heavily defended flagship, surrounded by escorts moving through secure space. He went to sleep in his quarters, with guards outside his door. He woke up on a human ship, his hands bound, facing 4 humans in black armor. The video was delivered to Admiral Krenthor 12 hours later. It showed Veloth alive and unharmed, sitting in a small room. A human voice spoke, never appearing on camera. High Commander Velk is being held as a prisoner of war. He is being treated in accordance with the Geneva Conventions and will not be harmed. He will be returned when the coalition withdraws from human space. This message is proof that we can reach anyone, anywhere. Think carefully about that. The recording ended. Krenthor played it again, studying every detail. The room gave no clues to location. Velkoth appeared unharmed, but clearly shaken. The implications were staggering. The humans had infiltrated a flagship, kidnapped a high commander, and extracted him without anyone noticing until morning. How? He demanded of his security chief. How is this possible? We're reviewing the flagship's logs now. No sign of boarding, no breaches, no unauthorized access. It's as if he vanished. He didn't vanish. They took him. 4 humans took our 3rd highest commander from the middle of our fleet. The security chief had no answer. The kidnapping broke something in coalition morale. If humans could reach a high commander on a flagship, they could reach anyone. Every officer, every official, every leader became paranoid. Security measures were tripled, then quadrupled. People slept in locked rooms with guards inside. Paranoia spread like a disease, and that was exactly what the humans wanted. Major Sarah Mitchell led Recon Team 7, one of dozens of Special Forces units operating behind coalition lines. Her team consisted of 4 people: herself, a communications specialist, a demolitions expert, and a medic who also served as their sniper. They had been in coalition space for 4 months and had conducted 17 successful operations. They were currently hiding in an asteroid field, watching a coalition patrol route and planning their next move. The pattern is predictable. Her communications specialist said patrol comes through every 8 hours. Same route, same ships. They're getting lazy, or they're setting a trap, Mitchell cautioned. Never assume the enemy is stupid. Assume they're learning. So, what's the play? Mitchell studied the tactical display. We mine the route, but not where they expect. They'll sweep the obvious ambush points. We hit them on their way out after they've cleared the area and relaxed. That's mean. That's the job. We're not here to fight fair. We're here to make them regret starting this war. Her team set the mines carefully positioned and timed. Then, they waited. Patience was the key to special operations. Anyone could attack. It took discipline to wait for exactly the right moment. The coalition patrol came through, swept the area, found nothing, and continued on. Mitchell let them get comfortable. Then 3 hours later, when they were on their way back and discussing dinner plans, the mines activated. 3 ships disabled, 1 destroyed. Recon Team 7 was gone before the first distress call went out. That was the pattern across Coalition space. Human special forces operated like ghosts. They hit targets that should have been impossible to reach. They disappeared without a trace. They made every Coalition soldier question whether they were safe anywhere. The psychological impact was enormous. Coalition forces were designed for conventional warfare, clear battles with defined objectives. This shadow war of sabotage and assassination was outside their experience. Soldiers who had been confident at the start of the war were now jumping at shadows. Captain David Chen, the captured Special Forces operator, finally started talking during his interrogation. Not because they broke him, but because he decided it would serve his purpose. "You want to know how we do it?" he asked his interrogators. "How we infiltrate secure facilities, how we move undetected, how we know where to hit you." "Yes," the Corfax interrogator growled. Chen smiled. "We're human. We evolved hunting prey that was faster and stronger than us. We learned patience. We learned to track. We learned to predict behavior. And we learned that the best time to strike is when the prey feels safe. You are not hunters. You are criminals. You attack from shadows like cowards. We attack from shadows because it works. You want honor? Fight another honorable species. You want to fight humans? Then you fight on our terms. And our terms are simple. We do whatever it takes to win." The interrogation was leaked to Coalition forces, and it had the opposite effect of what was intended. Instead of intimidating the humans, it showed that they were proud of their methods. They weren't ashamed of fighting dirty. They considered it smart tactics. Morale continued to deteriorate. The Moronian Empire withdrew from the Coalition after one of their supply fleets lost 6 ships to human attacks in a single week. The Threxian collective pulled back to defensive positions. The species that had joined the Coalition to demonstrate strength were now looking for ways to exit without losing face. Meanwhile, Earth's regular forces were learning and adapting. The battles at New Avalon had provided valuable intelligence on Coalition tactics and technology. Human engineers were developing countermeasures to energy shields. Human tacticians were creating doctrines for space combat that exploited Coalition weaknesses, and human diplomacy was working overtime to split the Coalition. Ambassador Jiang Wei met secretly with representatives from species that were wavering in their support. "This war doesn't serve your interests," he told them. "You joined because the Corax convinced you that humans were a threat. But what have we actually done? We defended ourselves. That's all. Meanwhile, your economies are suffering. Your people are dying. And for what? Cortex pride. The humans are dangerous." One ambassador argued weakly. "So are you. So is everyone. But we're dangerous to enemies, not to friends. We're offering trade agreements, cultural exchanges, alliance treaties. Join us instead of fighting us. Profit instead of bleeding." It was working. 3 species had already withdrawn from the Coalition. 5 more were negotiating. The Vexari, who had opposed the war from the start, were openly calling for peace talks. The Coalition was fracturing, and the Corax Dominion knew it. They had started this war to demonstrate their power and control the human threat. Instead, they had unified humanity, revealed their own military inadequacies, and lost allies. High Commander Velkoth was returned as promised when his government agreed to withdraw their forces from human space. He was unharmed, well-fed, and traumatized not by torture, but by the time he spent talking with his captors. "They're not monsters," he told Admiral Krenthor. "That's what makes them terrifying. They're rational, intelligent, even honorable in their own way. But they think about war completely differently than we do. They don't see it as a contest or a test of strength. They see it as a problem to solve, and they're very good at solving problems. What did they tell you? That this war was unnecessary. That they would have been happy to trade and cooperate with the Assembly. But since we chose violence, they would show us what violence really means. They said we were lucky they were being restrained. Restrained. They've killed thousands of our people. They've killed soldiers and destroyed military targets. They haven't touched civilian populations. They haven't used their nuclear weapons beyond that one tactical device. They haven't deployed biological or chemical weapons, and their captain assured me they have them. Everything they've done has been precisely calibrated to hurt our military while maintaining moral authority. Velcro looked at Krenthor with haunted eyes. We started a war with a species that has spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of war. They have strategies we've never imagined, tactics we can't counter, and worst of all, they have patience. They're willing to fight this war for decades if necessary. Are we? The answer was obvious. The coalition couldn't sustain this war for decades. They couldn't even sustain it for another year. Their economy was suffering. Their people were demanding answers. And every day, human special forces made life a little more difficult, a little more dangerous, a little more unbearable. Admiral Krenthor sent a message to the assembly. The coalition needed to negotiate peace. Not surrender, just peace. A return to status quo. Recognition of human sovereignty, and mutual agreements to respect territorial boundaries. The Corfax government was furious, but they were also realistic. They had lost the war, not on any battlefield, but in the shadows where human special forces operated. They had lost in the court of galactic public opinion, where humanity had painted them as aggressors. They had lost in the assembly chambers, where allies had abandoned them. But most of all, they had lost the will to continue. The humans had proven their point. Fight us, and we will make you regret it every single day until you give up. The message went out to human forces. Cease offensive operations. Maintain defensive posture. Await further orders. Major Mitchell received it while her team was planning another raid. We're standing down, her demolitions expert asked, disappointed. Looks like it. The coalition wants to talk peace. Did we win? Mitchell thought about that. About New Avalon holding off the coalition fleet. About the special forces operations that had crippled enemy logistics. About the political maneuvering that had fractured the coalition. About the thousands dead on both sides. We survived, she said finally. And we made them understand that we're not prey. That's victory enough. But in the back of her mind, she knew this wasn't over. The coalition might want peace now. But the Corax Dominion had been humiliated. And humiliated enemies didn't forget. They would be back someday. Stronger and better prepared. When that day came, humanity would be ready. Because that was what Deathers did. They prepared for the next threat, the next war, the next test of survival. Always. The Corax Dominion had built its reputation over 1,000 years. They were warriors, the strongest military power in the assembly, feared and respected by 46 other species. They had never lost a war. They had never retreated from an enemy. Their honor was their identity. Now that honor lay in ruins, destroyed by a species that had joined the galactic community barely 2 years ago. The siege of New Avalon had been a disaster. The Special Forces operations had crippled their logistics. The political maneuvering had cost them allies. And worst of all, they had been forced to negotiate with the humans as equals. Supreme Leader Krathen sat in his war chamber, surrounded by his generals, and contemplated the unthinkable. Peace with humanity meant accepting defeat. It meant acknowledging that the Corax, the greatest warriors in the galaxy, had been beaten by Deathworld primitives. We cannot accept this, he growled. Our ancestors would curse us from beyond. Our descendants would spit on our memories. The coalition has collapsed. General Thiexkar reminded him. We are alone in this fight. The other species have made peace with humanity. Then we fight alone. We have enough ships, enough warriors, and this time we do not play by assembly rules. We do not try to occupy human worlds or negotiate with their forces. We strike at the heart. We attack Earth itself and destroy their ability to wage war. The room went silent. Attacking Earth was a desperate move. The Sol system was humanity's most heavily defended location. Intelligence suggested they had turned every moon, every asteroid, every orbital platform into a weapon. But if the Corfax could destroy Earth's industrial capacity and break their will to fight, the war would end with Corax's victory. It is risky, Thiexkar said carefully. It is necessary. Gather our fleets. Every ship, every warrior. We end this now, one way or another. The Corax Dominion mobilized its full military might. 200 warships, their finest vessels, crewed by their best warriors. It was half their total military strength. A massive commitment that would leave their own territory vulnerable. But Craftman was right about one thing. This had to end. They would strike at Earth, humanity's ability to fight back and force a surrender on Corfax's terms. Honor would be restored. The Dominion's reputation would be salvaged. And the humans would learn that some species could not be defeated by guerrilla tactics and special operations. On Earth, in the command bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, Admiral Chen received the intelligence reports with grim satisfaction. "They're coming," he told the assembled military leadership. "The Corfax are committing to a direct assault on the Sol system. Full fleet, no allies, all or nothing attack." "They're desperate," General Martinez observed. "Good. Desperate enemies make mistakes. Don't underestimate them. They're still the most powerful military force in the assembly. 200 warships, all capital-class vessels. If this was a straight fight, they would crush us. Good thing we don't fight straight." Admiral Chen pulled up the strategic display of the Sol system. It looked like a maze of defensive positions, weapons platforms, minefields, and patrol routes. Months of preparation had turned humanity's home system into the most heavily fortified location in known space. "We've been preparing for this since first contact," Chen said. "Every simulation, every scenario, has been about defending Earth against a superior force. Now we get to see if our preparations were enough." "What's the plan?" someone asked. Chen smiled. It was not a nice smile. "We make them pay for every meter of space. We bleed them from the moment they enter the system until the moment they leave or die. And we show the galaxy what it means to attack a Deathworlders' home." The Corax fleet entered the Sol system with weapons hot and shields at maximum. They expected immediate resistance. Instead, they found nothing. No defending fleet, no challenging broadcast, just silence and empty space. "It's a trap," said immediately. "Of course, it's a trap," Crathen agreed. "But we have no choice. Forward all ships combat formation. Scan for mines and hidden weapons platforms." The fleet moved deeper into the system, every sensor at maximum, every weapon ready. They passed the orbit of Neptune and detected nothing. They passed Uranus, still nothing. By the time they reached Saturn, the fleet was tense and confused. Then the first attack came. It wasn't a fleet engagement or a missile barrage. It was an asteroid, a small one, maybe a 100 meters across, that had been positioned in Saturn's rings and given a push at exactly the right moment. It came in on a ballistic trajectory, too fast and too small to be a priority target, and struck a Corfax destroyer amidships. The asteroid was traveling at 30 kilometers per second. The impact released energy equivalent to a small nuclear weapon. The destroyer simply ceased to exist. "Kinetic weapons," the XR breathed. "They're using natural objects as weapons." More asteroids followed. Not many, just a handful. Each one carefully aimed at a different target. The Corax point defense systems managed to destroy most of them, but not all. 2 more ships took damage. One lost main power and had to be escorted to the rear, and they were still outside the orbit of Jupiter. "This is harassment," Craftman said. "They're trying to slow us down, wear down our defenses. Press forward. Do not let them dictate the pace of battle." The fleet continued inward, now actively evading the orbital trajectories of various celestial bodies. The humans had weaponized their own solar system. Every moon, every asteroid field, every orbit was a potential threat. At Jupiter, they found the first real defensive line. Weapons platforms, thousands of them, small and cheap, but armed with missiles and railguns. They formed a shell around the massive planet, using Jupiter's magnetic field to power their systems. "Destroy them," Craftman ordered. It took 3 hours to clear the platforms. They fought with automated intelligence. No crew to be killed or intimidated. They just kept firing until they were destroyed. By the time the Corax fleet moved past Jupiter, they had expended 30% of their ammunition on static defenses, and Earth was still 300 million kilometers away. "They're bleeding us," reported. "Our supplies are limited. If they have more defensive lines like this, they're bluffing. They don't have infinite resources either. Continue the advance." But the humans weren't bluffing. The asteroid belt was next, and it had been thoroughly militarized. Mining stations had been converted to weapons platforms, Asteroids themselves had been fitted with engines and guidance systems, turned into massive kinetic weapons. And hiding among the rocks were human ships, small and fast, waiting to strike. The battle in the asteroid belt lasted a full day. The Corax fleet had to advance slowly, scanning every rock, destroying every platform, hunting down every human ship. They won eventually. The belt was cleared, but they had lost 12 ships and expended another 30% of their ammunition. 60% of their offensive capacity was gone, and they still hadn't reached Earth. Mars was abandoned, its orbital platforms destroyed before the Corfax arrived. But the planet itself was booby-trapped. Defense systems hidden in the surface opened fire as the fleet passed. Missiles launched from hidden silos. It was another delay, another drain on resources. "This is death by 1,000 cuts," Thexar said. "They're not trying to defeat us in battle. They're trying to bleed us dry before we ever reach Earth." "Then we adapt," Krathman growled. "Increase speed. Accept some damage to get through faster. We can still win this if we reach Earth with sufficient force." The fleet burned hard for Earth, accepting hits from various defensive systems rather than stopping to clear them. It was a gamble, trading damage for time. By the time they reached Earth's orbit, they had 130 ships left, and most of those were damaged. But they were there. Earth hung in their view screens, blue and beautiful and vulnerable. "Launch all assault craft," Craftman ordered. "Target the major cities and industrial centers. We end this now." That was when Earth's real defenses revealed themselves. The moon lit up like a small sun as thousands of defense platforms activated simultaneously. Space stations that had appeared civilian dropped their disguises and revealed weapons, and the human fleet, which had been hiding behind Earth's magnetic field to avoid detection, swept around the planet in a coordinated strike. The battle for Earth was nothing like the Corfax had expected. Human ships fought with desperate courage, ramming when their weapons ran out, using their own reactors as bombs when they were disabled. Civilian vessels joined the fight, converted freighters and passenger ships throwing themselves at Corfax warships. And from Earth itself came a wave of missiles. Not advanced weapons, just simple rockets with nuclear warheads. Hundreds of them, thousands more than the Corfax could possibly intercept. They weren't accurate enough to hit specific ships, but they didn't need to be. They just needed to fill space with explosions, forcing the Corax fleet to maneuver, to waste point defense ammunition, to stay dispersed. "They're throwing everything at us," someone gasped. "Every weapon, every resource. Because this is their home," Thexar said quietly. "This is what total war looks like. They will sacrifice everything to protect Earth." And they did. The battle raged for hours. The Corfax had superior technology and training, but the humans had desperation in numbers. For every human ship destroyed, 2 more appeared. For every missile intercepted, 10 more were launched. The turning point came when a human heavy cruiser, badly damaged and losing atmosphere, turned directly toward the Corfax flagship. The Dominion's Pride was the largest ship in the fleet. Krathen's personal command vessel, a symbol of Corax's power. The cruiser's captain, a woman named Lisa Rodriguez, broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Captain Rodriguez of the U.S. Indomitable. To any humans listening, it has been an honor to serve with you. To the Corax, you came to our home, threatened our families, and expected us to bow. This is our answer." The Indomitable burned its engines at full power, too fast for the flagship to evade. Point defense systems tore the cruiser apart, but momentum kept the shattered pieces moving. The reactor core, still intact, struck the Dominion's Pride just after the main bridge. The explosion was visible from Earth's surface. Krathen died instantly. So did his entire senior staff. The flagship, the symbol of Corax's military might, broke into 3 pieces and began falling toward Earth's atmosphere. The Corax fleet, already bloodied and exhausted, broke. Without their supreme leader, without clear command, they retreated. Some ships tried to continue the fight, but most just ran. They fled the Sol system, leaving behind their dead and their pride. General Thexar found himself in command of what remained of the fleet. 73 ships, most damaged, all low on ammunition and fuel. He looked at the tactical display showing Earth still defended, still dangerous, still unbroken. "All ships," he broadcast wearily, Retreat to the rally point. The battle is over. We can still fight, one captain protested. No, Dexar said firmly. We came here to break humanity's will to fight. Instead, they broke ours. We came to destroy their home. Instead, they destroyed our hope of victory. Retreat now while we still can. The remaining Corfax ships fled the Sol system. Human forces pursued briefly, then let them go. There was no point in pressing the attack. The Corax were finished as a threat. On Earth, the celebrations were muted. They had won, but the cost was terrible. 30,000 dead, hundreds of ships destroyed, orbital infrastructure shattered. The debris from the battle would be a navigation hazard for decades. Parts of Earth's surface had been hit by falling wreckage, but they had won. Earth stood. Humanity survived. Admiral Chen stood at the observation window of Orbital Station 7, watching crews clear debris and recover bodies. General Martinez joined him, carrying 2 cups of coffee. We did it, Martinez said quietly. We defended Earth against the galaxy's finest military. We got lucky, Chen replied. If they had come with their full strength, if they had brought their allies, if they had been willing to use the kind of weapons we would have used in their position. But they didn't because they're not us. They don't think like us. They fight honorable wars with clear objectives and acceptable casualties. We fight to win whatever it takes. Chen sipped his coffee. Is that something to be proud of? It's something to be realistic about. We're Deathworlders, Admiral. We evolved in hell and learned to love the heat. That makes us dangerous, yes. But it also makes us survivors. And right now, the galaxy needs to understand that. The Galactic Assembly convened 3 weeks after the Battle of Earth. Representatives from all member species gathered to discuss the war, its outcome, and what it meant for galactic politics. The Corfax Dominion sent a new supreme leader, Krathen's successor, a younger Corax named Velar, who had opposed the war from the start. He spoke briefly. The Dominion acknowledges its error. We sought to control a perceived threat through force. We have learned that humanity cannot be controlled, only respected. We offer formal apology and reparations for the damage caused. It was a stunning reversal for a species that had never apologized for anything. The gallery murmured in shock. Ambassador Chen Wei rose to speak for humanity. He was tired, having spent weeks negotiating with dozens of species, but his voice was clear. The United Earth government accepts the Corax apology. We propose a formal peace treaty, recognition of human sovereignty, and the establishment of mutual defense agreements with any assembly species who wish them. We also propose something new, a complete redesign of galactic conflict resolution. He pulled up a holographic document. This is what we call the Solar Accords. It's based on Earth's own painful history of warfare. The document establishes rules for ethical warfare, protection of civilians, treatment of prisoners, and most importantly, it creates mechanisms for resolving disputes before they become wars. You would lecture us on ethics? Someone called out after the tactics you used. Yes, Chenny said flatly, because we know exactly how terrible war can be. We've spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing each other. We know every dirty trick, every war crime, every atrocity that sentient beings can commit. And we're telling you, don't go down that road. Learn from our mistakes. The Vexari representative spoke. The Assembly has maintained peace for 3,000 years. We do not need human rules. Your peace lasted until someone decided to break it. Chenny countered. And when that happened, you had no idea how to respond. You tried to use force against a species built for war, and it cost you thousands of lives. Our rules won't prevent all wars, but they will make wars less likely and less destructive when they do happen. The debate continued for days. Some species rejected the Solar Accords as human arrogance. Others saw wisdom in them, but the underlying message was clear. Humanity had earned a seat at the table, not through diplomacy or cultural achievement, but through the oldest method known to any species. They had proven they could fight and win. 6 months after the Battle of Earth, the political situation had stabilized into a new normal. The Corfax Dominion had signed a formal peace treaty with humanity, and was slowly rebuilding its reputation through honest diplomacy rather than military intimidation. The Assembly had adopted modified versions of the Solar Accords, creating better conflict resolution mechanisms, and humanity had achieved something unprecedented: Every species in the assembly now had some form of relationship with Earth. Trade agreements, cultural exchanges, military cooperation. Some relationships were warm, some were cautious, but all were respectful. Admiral Chen stood once again at his observation window, this time watching construction crews building new orbital platforms. These weren't weapons platforms, though. They were shipyards, trading stations, scientific research facilities. Earth was preparing for peace, but peace built on strength. Strange how things work out, General Martinez said, joining him. We fought a war to avoid being controlled, and now half the galaxy wants us as allies. They respect strength, Chen replied, and they fear our willingness to use it. That's not the worst foundation for peace. Do you think it will last? No war lasts forever, but neither does peace. We'll have threats in the future, new enemies, new challenges. The question is whether we learned anything from this war. What did we learn? Chin thought about that. About New Avalon holding against impossible odds. About the Special Forces operations that had crippled enemy logistics. About the Battle of Earth, where humanity had thrown everything they had at an enemy who thought they could be easily defeated. We learned that we're not alone anymore, he said finally. We're part of something bigger. We have allies now, friends, partners. But we also learned that we can stand alone if we have to. That's important. You can only have real allies when you don't need them. That's a very human way of thinking. It's a Deathworlder way of thinking. Trust, but be ready. Cooperate, but stay strong. Hope for peace, but prepare for war. Martinez raised her coffee cup. To survival, then to survival, Chen echoed. It's what we do best. On the Corfac homeworld, General Thexkar was writing a book. It was an analysis of the war with humanity, intended as a military textbook for future generations. The final chapter was titled Lessons Learned. He wrote, "We entered the war believing that humanity was dangerous because they came from a harsh world. We were correct, but did not understand the implications. A harsh world does not just create strong bodies. It creates strong minds, adaptive thinking, and an absolute refusal to accept defeat. We believed we could intimidate them with superior force. We did not understand that species which evolved as persistence predators do not recognize superior force as a reason to surrender. They recognize it as a reason to adapt. We believed we could occupy their worlds and control their population. We did not understand that Deathworlders see their home as an extension of themselves. They will defend it with the same ferocity that any creature defends its own life. We believed their tactics were dishonorable and unnivelized. We did not understand that honor is a luxury of species who have not faced extinction repeatedly. Humans have ethics and rules, but survival takes precedence over tradition. The greatest lesson we learned is this: humanity is not dangerous because they are violent. Violence is common in nature. Humanity is dangerous because they are intelligent, social, adaptable, and absolutely unwilling to quit. That combination, forged in the crucible of a Class 12 death world, created a species that cannot be defeated by conventional means. Our recommendation for future conflicts: do not fight humanity unless survival demands it, and if you must fight them, end it quickly or not at all. A long war with humans is a war you will lose, not because they are stronger, but because they will simply outlast you. They call it persistence hunting. We call it nightmare fuel. The book became required reading in military mace across the assembly. Species that had never met humans studied the car's analysis and came to the same conclusion. Humanity was best as an ally, not an enemy. On Earth, life slowly returned to normal. The war memorials were built. The dead were honored. The veterans tried to readjust to civilian life, and Earth's military planners began preparing for the next threat, whatever it might be, because that was what humanity did. They survived, they adapted, and they prepared. The galaxy had learned that lesson the hard way. In a small park in New Geneva, a memorial was erected for the Battle of Earth. It was a simple stone, with names engraved, thousands of them, and a single quote at the top. They came to our home, seeking our surrender. We showed them what it means to fight a Deathworlder. We showed them that humanity does not bow, does not break, and does not surrender. We are the children of terror, and we will defend our home until the stars grow cold. Visitors from across the galaxy came to see the memorial. Some came out of respect. Some came out of curiosity. Some came to understand what they had faced during the war. And some came to remember why they should never threaten Earth again. The war was over. Humanity had won, not through superior technology or greater numbers, but through sheer stubborn refusal to lose. They had shown the galaxy what a Deathworld species could do when threatened. They had earned their place among the stars through blood and sacrifice. And most importantly, they had sent a message that would echo across the galaxy for generations. Humanity could be killed, but humanity could not be conquered. Try to occupy their worlds and they would make you regret it. Try to break their will and they would break yours first. Try to destroy them and they would take you down with them. The galaxy had learned to respect that. Some species feared it. Some admired it. But all understood it. Earth was no longer just another world. It was the death world that had bared its fangs and made the galaxy flinch. And in the cold mathematics of survival that governed galactic politics, that made all the difference. Years later, when new species joined the assembly and asked about humanity, they were told a simple truth. The humans are peaceful. Trade with them. Learn from them. Befriend them if you can. But never ever threaten their home, because they are Deathworlders, and Deathworlders do not surrender. They survive always. And in their homes across Earth and her colonies, humans continued doing what they had always done. They lived, they loved, they built, and they dreamed of the stars. But they also remembered the war, and they stayed ready, because the galaxy was vast and full of wonders. But it was also full of dangers, and humanity had learned long ago that the price of survival was eternal vigilance. They were the children of terror, forged in fire and tempered by war. They had earned their place among the stars, and they would defend it, no matter what came